Welcome back. If you ever wondered who's the driving force behind the Home Builders Association of Greater New Orleans, it's none other than Dan Mills. His latest projects give us a more intricate view on what's going on in the city concerning the local housing market, and boy is that interesting, post-Ida repairs, construction costs, and construction labor needs. And welcome again to the show that a lot of viewers are interested in learning about housing affordability and housing occupancy in the Greater New Orleans area. Dan, it's nice to have you at Affordable Housing Matters again.
Thanks so much, Norm. I'm happy to be here.
We are in the throes of a great challenge now in terms of home ownership. Tell us about what's going on with that.
You know, we face a lot of headwinds in home building, and home ownership is clearly affected by that. You know, at the national level, we have real issues with mortgage rates, but more issue here locally is dealing with the insurance rates. We have a lot of things going for us in terms of low-cost provider in this area. We have lower energy rates, for example. However, the insurance rates, due to our location and proximity and our frequency of disasters that have hit us, have caused insurance carriers to move out of our area, and it's caused insurance rates to go up pretty significantly. And our new risk rating 2.0 that FEMA has put out for flood, our insurance commissioner, Jim Donnellan, has called it ruinous for our area. And then we have had, after Ida, we've had numerous companies that have left our marketplace, putting greater strain on the Louisiana Citizens Insurance Program, who now has over 130,000 policies. And so the reinsurance that they're having to buy to cover our citizens in this community is going through the roof, and we've seen a 63% increase approved for January 1st, and that's going to be hugely impactful. And again, that word from Jim Donnellan, ruinous, is really worrisome. Give
me an example, if you will, Dan, of a person, with the kind of obstacles a person might face trying to jump into the affordable housing market right now.
It's a real challenge. Flood is a number one thing. I'm in an X zone just on my personal home, and I used to get $600 insurance rate for the flood insurance program through FEMA, and that national flood insurance program, the rates are going up. I'm looking at a new rate of $3,400, so I will increase by 18% every year over the next 7 or 8 years until I reach that new rate. So that's going from $50 a month to $300 a month on my personal property. So this is going to impact people broadly, and that's in an X zone in a home that hasn't flooded since it was built in 1970. So the flood insurance rate pushing up that monthly cost is hugely impactful. You know, I've been very fortunate in life and in business, but many are on fixed incomes, and this is a situation that can be detrimental to their ability to stay in their homes just from flood insurance.
So if it can be detrimental for people to stay in their homes, it can be even more disastrous for people trying to get into a home.
That's right.
Say I'm looking for a $200,000 house in the Ninth Ward.
Absolutely. If you can find a $200,000 home, the flood insurance rate is going to be, again, around $3,400, $3,500, $3,600, so around $300 a month for that. Then we have to factor in the property insurance and the wind and hail. So when we begin looking at the wind and hail, there are no new carriers that are writing business here for any properties with a roof that's less than 5 years old, I understand from our insurance members. So if you have an older property, it's only the Citizens Plan that you're eligible to get into, and those rates are going up dramatically because so many carriers have left. So our Citizens Plan has over 130,000 policies. They're having to buy reinsurance on the national market. Due to storms and other catastrophes nationwide, the reinsurance market is upside down right now. So the insurance carriers have lost dramatic amounts of money. And so we're seeing those wind and hail rates go up 63% January 1 for residential, and they already went up 70% on commercial properties. And then that's only wind and hail. The property insurance as well, the homeowner's policy, those rates have gone up dramatically, and in particular commercial properties have gone up over 100% in 12 months for some of our members. So those costs can be dramatic. On an apartment complex, that might mean a policy goes up from $50,000 a year to $100,000 or $110,000 a year, and those multifamily unit owners have got to figure out how to account for that additional $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 in insurance, and that leads to higher rental rates.
Wow. Now, the Home Builders Association is installing a new board. How might they handle this challenge?
We were fortunate to install a new set of senior officers and a new board on November 29th. And so our leadership is coming in, and we've been looking at a number of options. So the number one driving force for affordable housing here is insurance right now. Now, there are other factors in terms of regulation and in terms of building supply and in terms of workforce shortages. These are all issues that many industries are dealing with. The insurance one is impactful for our housing affordability. And so we've got to find ways to attract insurance carriers back into our market. They have to feel safe in writing policies in our area. So what that means is we've got to give them pathways that show the resiliency of our housing. So that means we need to build stronger, more resilient homes. And the state of Louisiana has passed the new residential coding for building construction based on the 2021 standards from the International Code Council. That's going to require us, beginning January 1st, to implement new codes that will provide the most resilient housing that we have ever built in this state. So for an example, a roof, instead of just being plywood decking with clips, the roof will now be seamed. There will be tape at the seams, so that if a shingle comes off of the roof, there's still waterproofing underneath that shingle, because the real cost of repair is not replacing that shingle. It's when you get water penetration in the house and your insulation and your ceiling comes down, and now you've got, you know, a real situation. So the new IRC 2021 covers the specifications to build more resiliently, to prevent those kinds of impacts, and the insurance companies know this. And as we see those codes be implemented in our area, we believe that's going to attract more carriers back in and thus bring the cost of insurance down a bit.
Now, I have to ask you this question because it's always a factor in Louisiana and especially in New Orleans. To what degree does politics enter into this?
You know, politics is a way of life. Whether we're in New Orleans or we're in Chicago or we're in New York City, it's going to be a factor. And so bringing everyone together on the same page is always a challenge. But we've taken that first step. And I, for one, am really excited. You know, these new codes, they're going to cost a little bit more. We have to pay in order to build and add that. It's not going to be less expensive to add taping and waterproofing to these roofs, for example. But the long term is greater resiliency and lower rates on our insurance. And so that is really the key outcome. And we live in an area of the country that unfortunately is susceptible to those kinds of impacts, so we need to build for it. The flood insurance is another matter, though, because flood, FEMA is in control of those rates, and they're looking at it in a national perspective, and we face different flood risks here. But you know who else faces national insurance crises is the western states with the fire insurance. We see earthquake insurance being a common exclusion on the West Coast. We see flood being a primary one here. We see wind and hail in the central part of the country. And so maybe there's an opportunity. Certainly we haven't embraced or found anything that's 100%, but maybe there's an opportunity for, instead of a national flood program, a national catastrophe program that can cover many different risks at the national level. And that's definitely political. But if you can get broad-based buy-in, there's only 15% of the country participates in the flood program. So that means those participating are bearing a very high cost for it. And who buys flood insurance? Those that are most at risk. If you can spread the risk across the entire country, then the number of catastrophes that we have are a smaller percentage of the total pool. We may be able to find some relief.
Well, so that makes too much sense.
People smarter than me are looking at this.
That makes too much sense, Dan, so I don't know if the politicians can handle that.
That's right.
To what extent is the insurance commissioner responsible for the rise in property?
One of the things that the insurance commissioner can do and is doing is trying to find incentives to bring insurance carriers back in. And so post-Katrina, they were able to offer some incentive programs to reduce the risk impact or provide financial incentives to attract carriers to come back in the shorter term. You know, the changing the codes and building more resiliency is a marathon, not a sprint. It's going to help with the long-term solution, but they're not going to come back immediately because it takes time to change the resiliency of our housing stock. So Commissioner Donlan's office is working hard on that aspect as in a two-prong approach to try to find that, and that requires, again, that political element and finding the funding in order to put in there and attract those carriers back.
You know, the Home Building Association, the home building in general, has been a male-dominated industry. And now that women are getting involved, I guess the women are saying, why is this happening now that we're coming on stage?
You know, we face the same challenge that nursing has faced for years and years, you know, because it's very hard to get the men into the nursing field. And in housing, it's the same thing. When we're in building, it's very difficult to attract women into that environment. And there's a lack of awareness that there's opportunity for women to be involved in construction. And we have a council with our HBA, that's the Professional Women in Building. It's a very successful council. We have almost 50 members now in that council. They were nominated for a national award. They raised scholarship funds and helped out. They awarded a scholarship to Jamie Ribeiro de Sena, just announced last week. She got a scholarship. She was working in hospitality, and she said, you know, I really like working with my hands. I want to make a change. So she got involved with our Build Strong Academy on Williams Boulevard. She was able to enroll. She has gotten a certification in carpentry. She got an OSHA certification for safety. And she's very excited, and the Professional Women in Building Council awarded her a scholarship to help her with her costs of living and enrollment. And now she's looking at probably doing construction management with LSU Online as she begins to work in the industry. So she's making that transition. It's really exciting to see people taking advantage of that Build Strong Academy, and even more ingratiating to see women getting involved in the construction industry.
Is this something that can also be projected to high schools and young females, you know, who are students coming up from middle school on into high school? I see you've got a book there that says The House That She Built.
We do, you know. So one of our members, Molly Elkman, is an author, and she did this book called The House That She Built. And it's an amazing book. The ladies that produced this got together and built a home, and it was all women contractors on that build. And then they documented this down in a picture book. This is targeted for 1st to 3rd grade to help them understand, young women, young girls, to understand what's behind those walls, what's in that house, how does this all come together, and how could I be a part of that? And by seeing that, not only do the girls understand they can get involved and that this is maybe a path for their career, but it also helps the parents understand that there is a place for women in the workforce.
Yeah, that my wife would be very happy to see that book, because she gets very nervous when she sees me with tools. I remember my co-anchor Chris Fairbairn once saw me with a circular saw. She almost had apoplexy. Hold on to that saw, Norman.
You know, these books are available on Amazon.com. Okay. But I've got one for you, and you can bring over to your wife, and she'll be more than happy to provide that for you.
I can prove to her that I have been where I said I was going.
That's right.
Thank you, Dan. It's always a pleasure to have you visit with us here on Affordable Housing, and we look forward to your revisit again.
My pleasure, Norm. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And we would like to thank our guests for joining us here on Affordable Housing Matters. Also, if you miss an episode of our program, just click on the old QR code on our screen, and that will lead you to our YouTube page, where you can view all of our past programs at your leisure. Thanks again for watching. I'm Norman Robinson, and we will see you next time on Affordable Housing Matters.